it's Fafo time. You know, F around and find out. Trump has been in office for less than 2 weeks, and he is destroying the country with his internal coup. You know, the Project 2025 plan that he knew nothing about. The one that the media should have hounded him over, that should have buried him with it, but just managed to fade away like any other critical discourse. Well, with Trump on a pace to gut democracy faster than the little mustache man gutted Weimar Germany, it's definitely Fafo time. One member of the Blacks for Trump movement has just discovered it's Fafo time and went on CNN to threaten Trump. You have to immediately ask, dude, where have you been? There are no surprises here. The Fraternal Order of Police endorsed the felon even as he was out on the campaign trail promising to release the J6 insurrectionists. Then they're horrified when he pardoned all of them, cop killers and those guilty of assault as well. And then watched as he released cop killers from prison, pardoning all J6 insurrectionists. Latinos for Trump listened all summer long to Trump promising mass deportation to white voters. And now they are seeing their own family members being deported.
I get a chance to talk to you, man. Yo, please, man, let's work something out. So, you, man, let me keep my wife here. You know what I'm saying, man? She deserves to be here, man.
Farmers are watching crops rotting in the fields because no one is willing to work the harvest. Exactly what they were told was going to happen. All these people knew better. Trump's not going to do that. At least, not to me. Auto workers in Michigan? Joe Biden kept you working. Kamala Harris promised you the same. Now, Trump is enacting a 25% tariff on Canada, which manufactures a load of auto parts. With the 25% tariff, auto workers will be lucky if they're still working 2 weeks from now. You wanted Trump? You got him, baby. Good thing you didn't vote for the black woman, huh? And speaking of black people, exactly what did Blacks for Trump think they were getting voting for Trump? This is the guy who tried ordering the army to go out and shoot black people. Watch as this spokesman for Blacks for Trump discovers that DEI is just a replacement term for the N-word, and that, lo and behold, Trump is a white supremacist.
You know what's sad? The helicopter crew that Trump has repeatedly blamed before any investigation has happened. We don't know yet all the causes because it won't just be one thing. One of the families doesn't want that person's name released. And it seems, based on their statement, that that third person who was on the helicopter was a woman. Because they are looking for a scapegoat who is a woman or a black person or whatever. Like, they're looking for some people
on the right, and I call it the woke right, on the right, who were literally saying that I think the male pilot had 1,000 hours, this phantom female pilot had 500 hours of training time. They don't know anything about what the requirements are. They don't know how long that person had been in service. Donald Trump appealing to these people in his second week when we're not talking about the economy. We're not talking about any of that. We're talking about DEI, and he had no evidence, and people are out there defending it. I'm not going to get on television to defend it. I want Donald Trump to know you are making it hard for us who are not looking for a payout or some sort of association or the social media influence behind supporting Donald Trump or any politician. We want to support you because we believe in what you're doing, and when you get out here and do this stuff around DEI, knowing that this support that he's gotten from black people, this uptick, it's not permanent. Meaning that you're going to see.
I don't see how you can support him. I have to be honest. I don't see how you can make excuses for him. I don't see how you can try to explain it. I don't.
This is Donald Trump.
I get it.
You know that, right? Like, this is not like a show. This is actually Donald Trump.
It's part of the technology terms called this is a feature, not a bug. It's not. Everyone's like, oh, can you believe he did that? Then can you believe he did that? I don't believe it when he does something sensible. That's where I am. I'm like, oh, look above. He's doing something sensible.
Now, okay, I did not expect a spokesperson for Blacks for Trump to be the next James Baldwin, but threatening Trump that black support might be removed? Dude, the time for your support is over. You idiots voted for him even though he said no one is ever going to have to vote for him again. But here is the most confusing thing about what was said. Blacks for Trump supported him because we believe in what you are doing. What exactly is that? What is Trump doing? Donald Trump only accomplished one thing in the White House, a tax break for billionaires. He personally caused the price of gas to go up, which led to inflation. He completely mismanaged a pandemic and in the process made vaccines political. He destroyed the economy, he destroyed our standing in the world, and he's responsible for the deaths of 400,000 people. Currently, he is stopping all health information from government agencies, all health research, and is crippling every single federal agency. So please, tell us again, what is it that Donald Trump is doing that you believe in? Because every federal employee, black or white, would really like to know. So not only did you F around and now you're finding out, but the rest of us are getting screwed too. And now you're thinking about withdrawing support? Imagine our joy. I'm Anthony Vincent Gallo for Occupy Democrats.
Hello, my name is Tara Graham, and welcome to our special post-inaugural report. And it's an extension of our reporting for our Inequality Watch show. And today we'll break down what we like to call here at The Real News the Second Gilded Age, and that seems perfectly aligned with Trump's ascent to power. Now, the first one occurred nearly 100 years ago, and it didn't end well. And now the chasm between the rich and poor is as extreme as it was in that era. Now, back then, wealthy industrialists like J.P. Morgan and Rockefeller ran the country, while elected officials stood by. Now it's tech bros like Tesla's Elon Musk, Meta's Mark Zuckerberg, Amazon's Jeff Bezos, Sundar Pichai of Google, all of whom, mind you, had front row seats at President Trump's inauguration. And we thought this was worth discussing in light of his inauguration, which seemed to us like peak Gilded Age. In fact, there were so many billionaires in attendance and so many in his cabinet, I think it's more than 10, right?
Yep.
That we were wondering if it was some sort of like a fire code violation in the Capitol when there's more than 50 billionaires in a room.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Well, I think billionaires are accelerants, so yes, it's possible that they were treated differently in terms of accounting for fire code. Yeah,
I think you're right.
Yeah.
But you know what, in all seriousness, it's pretty odd that an administration that purports to be...
Okay, thank you for coming. Proud to be joined by Senator Murray, Senator Berkeley, Senator Klobuchar, Senator Kim, and Senator Murphy, I believe, is on his way. Look, last night, President Trump plunged the country into chaos without a shred of warning. The Trump administration announced a halt to virtually all federal funds across the country. In an instant, Donald Trump has shut off billions, perhaps trillions of dollars that directly support states, cities, towns, schools, hospitals, small businesses, and most of all, American families. This is a dagger at the heart of the average American family in red states, in blue states, in cities, in suburbs, in rural areas. It is just outrageous.
So, friends, first, we learned that a senior FBI official was forcefully resisting Trump administration firings at the FBI. Who was that senior FBI official? Donald Trump's acting FBI director, Brian Driscoll. And now we see that a top FBI agent in New York vows to dig in after removals at the agency, at the FBI. Are the points of light multiplying and gathering strength? Let's talk about that, because justice matters.
Justice. It's just for us. Oh, I don't have my glasses. And fish, you didn't put it in capitals. Anyway, I'm just tickled pink for Donnie because he is basically destroying the United States, and the United States really, take it all the way back to Christopher Columbus. They don't like to talk about that, but it's one of those things.
What about you? Are you coming? Yes.
Ba-do-ba-boo. Well, Fish, you just keep talking. This is your place to talk. I can't read it, but just knock yourself out there. I'm looking for this other thing here. Here we go. Where's this guy? Yeah.
Donald Trump invited the rich lion into the sheep's den of America, and he is eating as fast as he can, and that would be Elon Musk in this breaking story. And if you think this is an accident by Donald Trump, it is not. I have presented a lot of chilling stories on this platform, and I'm telling you right now, I am doing the best I can to hold it in, because this breaking story I'm going to show you in a few seconds is the absolute most chilling ever, and that is not a joke. The official coup and takeover of the American government by its president and his bestest rich, powerful pal paying off politicians to function for him, cross-marrying the executive branch with the judicial branch and the backing of the legislative branch, is going to spell the end of what we know as democracy in this breaking story. And before I show that to you in a few seconds, take a listen at what we need to understand about one of the representatives that was at the building today and Elon Musk. Take a listen to this real quick.
In a dramatic political comeback, Donald Trump will return to the White House. And if he's going to share the credit for his victory with anyone, it's this guy.
Where is he? Come on up here, Elon. Come here.
Elon Musk, known for selling cars, making rockets, became one of the biggest political donors in American history.
Even with the Supreme Court's Citizens United ruling allowing corporations to spend unlimited amounts on campaigns, the nearly $200 million that Musk spent, along with his intense campaigning both on X and on the ground, dwarfs precedent.
A star is born, Elon.
And he's already reaping the rewards. Immediately after Trump's victory, Tesla shares went through the roof.
In a single day after the election, his net worth goes up, by like $26 billion. And that's just the beginning. Trump is in a position to make him even richer.
Musk is like the de facto vice president, and he is going to have a role kind of reshaping the contours of the federal government going forward.
There's a word for guys like this.
Elon Musk is an oligarch.
I'm Senator Andy Kim from New Jersey. About 20 years ago, when I first came to work for the federal government, I walked through these doors right behind me. I was started off my career in public service at USAID. And I have to tell you, it was really tough today walking through these same doors 20-some years later, only to see it shut down to employees. In fact, I went inside, tried to speak to the acting administrator, Gray. Unfortunately, was not able to meet with him. I want to hear straight from him.
Fish, why did you take your stuff down?
And by that, I mean in the sense that
it.
he is a very wealthy business person who has used and seems to be interested in continuing to use his political connections to make money.
I'm going to let the story and the letter from the U.S. Justice Department backing Elon Musk speak for itself. Here's the story. Oh my God. Scary, frightening, breaking news. Trump's D.C. U.S. attorney says that, in quotes, any threats, confrontations, or other actions in any way that impacts what Elon Musk's people are doing will be investigated by his office, since that may break numerous laws. On letterhead from the U.S. Department of Justice, Edward R. Martin Jr., U.S. Attorney, says, Dear Elon, it was good to work with the Doge team this weekend. We must keep all our American government employees safe, and we must protect the American people's property. Anyone imperiling others, violating our laws. I recognize that some of the staff at Doge has been targeted publicly. At this time, I ask that you utilize me and my staff to assist in protecting the Doge work and the Doge workers. Any threats, confrontations, or other actions in any way that impact their work may break numerous laws. Let me assure you of this. We will pursue any and all legal actions against anyone who impedes your work or threatens your people. We will not act like the previous administration who looked the other way as the Antifa and BLM rioters, as well as thugs with guns, trashed our capital city. We will protect Doge and other workers no matter what. Can we actually be serious that someone from the judicial branch of this government just wrote that letter to the richest man in the world, who is a private citizen, not an elected official, and Doge is not a government agency, and simultaneously claimed in an official letter, on official letterhead, that it was Antifa and Black Lives Matter that attacked the Capitol on January 6th? Are you shitting me? Folks, I'm going to say this to myself as if I'm looking in a mirror. Try to stay calm, breathe, try to enjoy your life.
Guys, first of all, this is, the coup, right? The coup, kind of happened back there in 1812, after the revolution of 1776. Years go by, England comes up across the big pond, up the estuary into DC, burns it to the ground, and tells the old farts, listen, you do what we say or else. And it has been ever such. The United States has never been a democracy. At best, it was a republic, right? And look what the republics of Greece and Rome, right? Rome, the last 100 years, was full of guys who, walked away with the problem with all falling democracies or republics is that at a certain point, the rich get in and just take everything, right? They're called oligarchs, right? Or plutocrats, right? And that's what America has been. They called it capitalism, but it's not really that. And so, all the government workers that were elected. Yes, exactly. And again, Fish, I don't know why you took down what you wrote that I couldn't read. But bottom line is, guys, you can say anything you want. The other night we had a young man or old man, I don't know how old the guy was, but basically he had issues and he wanted just to talk about that. So I let it go on. I actually called up a friend of mine who is a counselor. We tried to counsel him on, but he, anyway. Bottom line, this channel is for everyone to say whatever they want in the community sense, right? I just tell stories, Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. That's me, this guy right here, your griot who tells you stories that make you go, right? So, what just happened in the last week, especially with the, tariffs, was a scam. Donnie says, oh, I'm going to do this. He does, it's problem, action, solution, right? It's been the fascist playbook ever since, guys, what we're experiencing was kind of invented in Babylon. And it has been going on and on and on and on. That's why Jesus kicked the money changers out of the temple, right? Bottom line is, You're not supposed to sell your soul, right? And so he says, "Oh, we're going to put these tariffs on, Canada and Mexico and China, right?" So this morning the market opens, and all his billionaire buddies basically shorted the stock market. That's when you bet on the stock market to fall. Meaning, when the stock market falls, you make money. That's shorting, right? So all those guys did that, right? Then, you know, it, Donnie says, "Oh, I just had a conversation with a girl from Mexico. They're going to put 10,000 soldiers on the thing and keep the fentanyl out of America." Well, most of the fentanyl comes into this country not by mules coming over, the Rio Grande. No, they come in on airplanes, with tickets, and it's usually white people who are bringing it in, couriers, right? Because the precursor chemicals to fentanyl really, don't take a lot of space, and it's like cooking meth in your kitchen. It's and most of the drugs in this country are basically, guys, you don't realize that we haven't had a government. It has, our politicians have been bought, since, what's his name? Oh, the guy who killed the Cherokee, Andrew Jackson, right? But before them, of the founding fathers, go get the recording of Hamilton, listen to all the songs, right? They really speak to the corruption of this country. This has always been set up for the rich. And why we're a country of immigrants? Because we are the slave race. And basically, it's time to cut, haircut the population. And the rest of the world is it's dropping off very quickly. And I would say there's going to be, this little bird flu or something else. But Donnie has done what he did for the other pandemic. The other pandemic we had, Obama had a pretty good protocol for this, right? And he had medical supplies, PPE, and ventilators, and all that kind of stuff, in warehouses. And Donnie sold it all, to a friend. He made a nice quick buck, and his friend held on to it. And then when it was really needed, he soaked everybody. I mean, this is problem action. You want to make some money? You make a problem. You have this action, and then you bring forth the solution. Oh, look at this, and it is perfectly illuminated in what Donnie did with the tariffs in Mexico. He's going to do something similar to Canada, but the Canadian people, see, don't understand. I don't think they're going to let go of this. And see, the thing is, the United States is scheduled to fail, meaning once the U.S. dollar is no longer the premier money, and that's what BRICS is being set up to, is to take its place. And China, America, after World War II, was the only place that didn't get bombed. So it was making stuff. So it made a lot of money between 45 and 65. And then we started allowing the rest of the world, because we are an exploitive, and we take the resources of other countries, and we don't pay well for them, and we leave them. Nigeria is a good example. Very rich in everything. We've taken it out fast as we can, and leaving a toxic waste dump and a war zone, right? Sierra Leone, all of the areas in the center core of Africa. Any country in Africa that has no resources has peace. Any country that has resources has war. It's right in front of our faces, right? Now, I worked in the corporate world for 15 years, as a negotiator, right? Because I could read people. When the lawyers were desperate, they would call me in. I didn't have to work very hard. I had to work very long. You know, made money. I seemed to always be in the right place. I kind of earlier on in my life, I could have made a lot of money. I didn't, right? Because I went to prep schools that I saw the richest people. Joe Kennedy was my roommate. So Robert Kennedy, who's now going to be head of HHR, I met that family. You know, the school I was in was right on the border of New Hampshire and Massachusetts, and Robert Kennedy came to get his son um, and visit the school. And they were in Massachusetts, right? They could have taken a limousine, so the drive would have been an hour or so. No, he took a Bell, Aerojet helicopter from his house in Hyannis and took the whole family in the helicopter and landed on the putting green right in front of our major building there. And he didn't have to do that, right? And then a limousine showed up, and they took me too, to the nicest restaurant downtown. Which there was nobody there. It was nice enough, and I just sat and watched everybody, and nobody seemed too happy. Well, the kids I went to, Eddie Merrill, Ricky Lynch, Merrill Lynch. Went to school. I knew them. They were in my class. I knew them really well. UB Hobart, the slicing meat, notoriety, and Alex Orb, U.S. Steel, you name it. I went to school with them. There wasn't a single happy chappy there. Right? They had more money than I had. No money. Other than your bed, your class, and your 3 squares. It was like a jail. And the other stuff that made life a little more, that had like a student hangout where you could get cheeseburgers and milkshakes and other stuff, that you might want. The kids' general store, I guess. My parents didn't put a nickel in there, so I had nothing. I lived off the largesse of my friends, right, who would buy me a milkshake or two. But I never saw anybody happy. And all those guys, why I was their friend, is that I would listen to them. And then, not do the stupid shit other people said to them. I would empathize with how they felt. Right? And so that put me in training. Little did I know that 50 years later, I'd be working for desperate lawyers, doing the same thing, listening to the same people go on and on in a lawyer's office about contracts. And all they were doing was doing the same thing they were when I was in prep school with them, right? They were whining about their emotional lackings, the hole that was in their heart. And no matter how many trillions of dollars that they could get, there was nothing that could fill it, because the only true thing that can fill your heart is when you help somebody else out. And I don't like giving money, but help them out, like listen to them, right? So what I do here, that's what I do. I'm sitting in a wheelchair right now because I can't really walk too well, because I've been sleeping and walking on concrete for the last 5 weeks, right? We had that big frozen thing, and the deep green is just thawed out this week. And the morons who live at the end of the cul-de-sac, they, drive on that road. I mean, they destroyed the road because and this is a metaphor, they're the only ones there, right? There's no one else riding on that. I'm not there. The other people aren't there. And so when they go up that hill, when it snows, when the first 6 inches came, right? The first person out makes tracks. The next person out should follow those tracks. The next person should follow those tracks, because what happens is they take that down to the earth. The sun hits it and melts the snow and ice this way. But what do those clowns do? They went all over the whole road, pushing the snow down. So when it got really cold, like 8 degrees below zero for 5 days straight, it turned into one gigantic 2 inches of ice. So then they really had to like tear the road up trying to get out, right? And they had 4-wheel drives and trucks with big tires, and so they ran on the side into the woods, unbelievable, right? So I hadn't been there for 2 weeks. I went the last about a week and a half ago. I went there when we had rain, warmth, but it's in a holler, so the sun doesn't hit it all the time. But it was icy and slushy and muddy, and I got down there and I checked things out, and everything was fine. And I came, and I prayed to God, okay, get me up the hill out of here, and they did, right? Because I put it in low, I went slow, I went in on the edge that no one drove on. I got out of there, right? So a week and a half later, I came back. It's hasn't really been cold. It's been sunny and it's kind of dried up. But these clowns have, in that week and a half, they drove, and it's mud. So they have, it's like, the Grand Canyon everywhere. So when the rains come, it's going to wash the road away. It's like, really? Okay. And this is a metaphor to the rest of the communities that no one cares about anyone but themselves. And what Donnie is, mega is 100, make America great again. No, it's like, it's me, right? Not about us. How, the we, the people, when I died in 2014, one of the things I knew this my whole life, and I acted upon this my whole life. And I was talking to a friend of mine in New York, and he's one of my oldest. He's been my good bud for a good 55 years, right? I said, so when did we meet? And he said, oh, I guess it was 72 or 3. So 72 is 82, 92, 2002, 2012, 22, that's 50 years, 50, 55 years, 54 years, right? Anyway, and what's great about this guy is, so I haven't really talked to him about 6 months. And it was like we were just talking yesterday, right? And I haven't seen him in, God, physically been in front of him since 2011, right? Anyway, so we were talking, and what's interesting about him, so I think you have a sense of my worldview. Well, he's a very conservative guy. He's very, he couldn't stand, he's like Barry Goldwater Republican, right? And I respect that. And one of the things he always really loved about me, because we were both artists too, so we were, that, and he was a plumber and I was the electrician. We would work. He would get a job and say, I know this electrician. And we had a buddy of ours, Willie. He was the carpenter. Bariah was the mason. Gary was the floor sander and painter. So we had a crew, and we were all artists, painters, sculptors, performance artists, whatever. And we were that Soho community, right, of the early 70s, right? And I was that Soho community of the late 60s, So a lot of those guys are dead. So, my buddy and I, Jay and me, we are the only. Willie's dead. Mariah, I have no idea. Gary is dead. So it's a very interesting motif. So anyway, we talked today, and we talked about the kids and the grandkids, and he's in still pretty good shape. He went skiing with his granddaughter, and so he was. And I remember when he had his first kids, and he was so focused on his art career and making money, And we lived on the the low fruit of the 70s, meaning pretty much people don't realize, but the 1970s, the United States went bankrupt from 1968 until 2008, and then we went bankrupt again. It's like one of those things. We haven't been solvent in all those years, and we really only had a very, when Bill Clinton, he basically decontrolled everything, sold everything, all the stuff that people go, oh my God, what Doge? Well, Bill Clinton did it to the max. He sold everything down the river. He got rid of every, FDR control to protect the poor citizen. He got rid of it all. Right? More than, and the guy who started it was Jimmy Carter. The last guy who had anything to do to making the common citizen's life better was Richard Nixon. He basically took the few things that LBJ, the Voting Rights Act and the this, LBJ did three of those things to give a kind of sense that black people had equality. Richard Nixon went a lot further, right? And he put all those things that the Great Society, LBJ was talking about, kind of plugged them in and started passing laws to make them work. He started the EPA, he started OSHA, he started pretty much anything that protected the worker and the environment, right? And also a number of banking and trust busting things, right? Get rid of the guy. And that's one reason he got kicked out. Right? And that's what happened in the oil embargo. That was you talk about, the guy was saying, oh, it's a coup. That was a coup that got rid of Richard Nixon. Because every other president did way worse things than what Nixon did. He just got set up. He didn't know that his plumbers were doing all this. All those guys were CIA guys, NSA guys, right? And he had no idea that was going on, right? And John Mitchell, now that guy should have really gone to jail because he was the intermediate between COG and poor Richard, who was set up. Richard Nixon came from a poor family, not like Kennedy. Kennedy's dad was a gangster, an OG, made money selling, prostitution numbers, racketeering, and alcohol, right? Then he took that money and went into Wall Street right after World War I, and just made a ton of money, right? And right at the top, at like 1927, when everyone was getting into the stock market, it was like buying, fungibles, Bitcoin. He sold out, and he not only sold it, he turned it into gold, right? And then the Depression crashed, and he had all this gold, and he and Getty bought up the stock market for nothing. Getty bought all the resources, and Kennedy bought all the assets. Right? So that was the Kennedy family. And they were not nice people. But what happened was at a certain point in Jack's life and Robert's life, they realized that there was something missing. And Jack, he had it's like me, I have a limited, I'm way past sell-by date, And so, I died in 2014, and then I came back, and I kind of, lost all that weight. They wanted to chop my legs off, cut 20 feet out of my colon, have me shit through an ileotomy bag, crack my chest and do a quadruple bypass. And I said no. And I took all the, and luckily that lawyer needed me. He spent the money, he took me down to his nice hacienda in the Keys, and I got an acupuncturist, a colonic therapist, a, endocrinologist, you name it, I got them. And it, that first 3 weeks re-triggered my homeostasis. So I kind of stabled. I took care of his need. He had a few more little projects for me. So he sent me back down to the Keys and kept paying for those guys to take care of me. So within that 3-month period, I was, I had lost, 60 pounds out of that 400 something pounds I had. So I was down to like almost 300 pounds. And within 7 years, I got down to like, what I am now. I kind of between 195 and 210. Right? So I did that because I knew I had to do that, because it was part of my agreement with God that, because I had this amazing life up to then. And so we were talking, my friend and I were talking today about, from 1972 to 88 when I left, right? And he said, so he spent all that time, from 72 to 88, he spent in New York City, being a plumber, being an artist, being, a dad. And he said, I never thought I was that good of a dad, but he was, meaning because I was part of their family. It was, Uncle Al. And so I said, no, you were the perfect dad because you were there all the time, meaning in the house, had dinner with them, made breakfast for them, and that's his wife really didn't get up until like 11, and he'd get up with the kids, and he'd make them breakfast, and their school was just down the street. And that was the beauty of New York City. Schools were within walking distance of everybody, and because New York City was like Harlem. Harlem wasn't all black. Second Avenue, every 2 blocks a different European, Polish, Lithuanian, Estonian, you name it. And not just Polish, but every type of Polish, every type of Hungarian, every type of Lithuanian. And our school of PS 102, it was like the UN. And that's why they put the UN on Second Avenue, right? And then, the straight part, Broadway, or it was called Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard, and then it's now MLK. And that was the black, and that was the Miracle Mile, Miracle 3 miles, and that Harlem was an amazing place. It wasn't a ghetto. It was a place of everyone was striving and doing stuff and moving forward. That was everyone had a little business. Everyone, no one was looking for a handout. Right? They were moving up, right? And on the west side, that's what we call Caribbean. That's over by Columbia and Cathedral. So, and there were a whole bunch of theological universities over there too, Columbia and Barnard, and these theological universities, a Jewish one, a Catholic one, I think Manhattanville was what it was called, and 2 Protestant and Methodist ones, and Bishop Coffin. It was just this amazing cultural salad bowl, right? And I grew up in it, as a youngster, right? And I could walk anywhere, do anything, because grandmas were everywhere. And we had no police. There were no police, right? And when my grandma had her place, was kind of in the black neck of the woods, because it had been this whole street, 128th Street, maybe. Anyway, it was near Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard, and right up the street from us where Malcolm X's temple was, right? And he called it a temple, and instead of a mosque. And it had been an old department store. And so you walked in, this big kind of big doors going in. It was like a hotel. Over here was a place you could get something to eat. Over here was a place you get some food. These stairs went up, and there was a mezzanine, and that was a medical center up there. And then everything above was classrooms. You want to learn how to type. You want to learn how to do this. One, how to do that. And there was a mosque up further up, right? And you didn't have to be Muslim to go in there, right? If you needed something, they were there because Islam is all about hospitality. And so is Judaism, and so is Christianity. But both have lost their way, Everything Christian, not just Catholic, but they've really lost their way on that because they basically have broken up into sects. Christianity is like, 60,000 little cults, right? And that's what's going on in America. There's all these little cults of belief. Instead of, believing and not believing, but having faith in their brother and sister and serving love's co-creation through honoring the Constitution. No one honors the Constitution. Right? So, I mean, look, Carrot Head didn't even put his hand on the Bible when he took the oath, right? He had his fingers crossed. So it's not like Carrot Head's the worst, the terrible, oh, he's a fascist, oh, he's Adolf Hitler. No, I hate it when people do that because he's no worse than Adam Schiff or, what's his name, Mitch McConnell, or any of those other morons. They all represent themselves, And some are better actors than others. The OC, they all, the crew, they can give a good speech, but Adam Schiff, he's worthless. It's just they're all worthless. At least Donnie is a fair game show host. That's all he is. He's a game show host, right? Because all of this stuff is scripted. I keep saying, oh, this, the war in Ukraine, scripted. When that broke out, I said, this is going to last 5 years. It's going to be a war to the very last Ukrainian, right? And basically, Russia's going to be turned into Disneyland, right? And the big losers are going to be the Ukrainian people and the Russian people, who are basically the same people. They shouldn't be fighting. And it's also, we are going to, basically what Donnie's doing, I'm going to take, Panama and, the Gulf of America, this is all, go watch the 1960 whatever version of 1984 that was made in England. I showed, bits of it on this thing to you guys to get you. It's really good because the first time I went to England, I went with my parents. I guess it was when was I freshman in high school? 64. And I went with them. My dad went for some, meeting of the Manhattan Club, meaning all the stuff. See the they called it, what the atomic bomb, Manhattan Project. Well, the atomic bomb wasn't the big thing. No, that was like number 10. Time travel was number 1. Spatial, dimensional going through portals was number 2. That was like the Philadelphia experiment. They had versions of Looking Glass, being able to see the future and the past, and all the different, permutations of what is, right? So all of that stuff was being, that was Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla had turned Eastern Long Island, Preston Nichols Manhattan, Montauk Project. It's at the tip of the iceberg. All of that end of Long Island is one big science fair, right? It goes under the ocean, right? It's all, you just can't believe, our technological, and see, it's corporate. Meaning, if all these secrets were held by the government, people would know about it because there's a thing called the Freedom of Information Act, right? But when a corporation owns a piece of information, that's proprietorial. Meaning you can't, they own it. You can't get at it. So all the real secrets are owned by Lockheed and all these other corporations. They don't even register their name. And so a good person, so Stephen Greer is very good. He really wants disclosure, right? And he's spent his whole life. He's just put his whole life into it, right? And that's what my friend and I were talking about. He said, Al, so I've known you 50 plus years. You're my closest friend, and yet I have all these other friends who think I'm their friend, but they've not gone through what we did together. 50 years. And he goes, between when we met at Cooper in 2007 or so, those guys all really wanted to be artists. I enjoyed making art. I enjoyed being part of a community that made art, right? Art for art's sake, right? And that's why people like Lisette Modell, Cardi Brisson, Billy Kluver, and a number of other folks in that crew of, that was like from 1911 till 1980. I was in their crew, Herbert Berghoff, Uta Hagen, the kids, who had the Living Theater, Julian Beck and Judith Molina, all those people. I was the kid, and I, if they had kids, they were my age, and they're my friends too. I knew them at that time. So I had all these different people, not just one group, all these, threads, and I kept tying them together, right? That's what I do. That's my art form, right? And so anyway, we were talking about things of that nature. He said, during that period, I spent all my time, working, taking care of the family and being an artist, and that's why I thought I was a terrible father because I was so focused on being an artist. And so, but you came in, you were part of the community, you would do all these things in our community and make it happen. But then you'd have all these jobs, you'd make some money, you'd always be living in an abandoned building, and you'd have a nice little bankroll and get on Freddie Laker, and we wouldn't see you for a year or two. You'd be traveling the world, and I did between 64 and I guess '05 was my period of world travel, and the majority of it. So from 64 until 70, I traveled all over America, right? And rode the rails with the Bohemians, and hitchhiked, and took the Gray Rabbit with Lester, and did all those kind of fun things. Anyway, I did all that kind of stuff, and I would bring those people into the New York scene and jazz it up with that. And so my buddy Jay, he was telling me about all the times that I would show up, and he said it was like magic. He would just poof, show up right at the right time, right at the right show, and you'd have this circus with you, and it would marinate whatever what was going on, and it would get really amazing. Some of those people would stay, and then within 6 months. I mean, I never really stayed in New York longer in that period, like between 64 and 88. I didn't really stay in New York. I don't think I stayed there longer than a year and a half, right? Because I'd be like, go be on a trip, get involved in something else, do something here. I spent 3 years in New Mexico with a Hopi and working in the nuclear industry. So that's been my life has been one of having it being interested, right? So there are a lot of people who get a hold of me. And if you want to get a hold of me, you get a hold of me at the dudeawake42@gmail, right? And talking on the phone, eh, first it has to be on the internet, right? There are a number of people who want me to like just talk to them on the phone, and you know that is in a way there's something about writing, either taking it away or writing it down. That is, it gets it out of you. When you speak it, it just goes into the receiver, right? And so when people have real issues, it seems that since I've been doing this Dreamy Dreamland show, I've had about 170 people who've got a hold of me at the dudeawake42@gmail, dudeawake42@gmail. And I've gotten to them and we have talked, right? On the internet first. And it gets to a certain place where I go, okay, we can talk on the phone now, right? And usually I don't, I'll call them up and we talk and talk and talk and talk for an hour, 2 or 3 or 4. And then I won't talk to them for a month or two. But I feel, they need to talk to me. So my friend who the other night talked to that guy or gal, whatever it was, um, Mr. Babylon, I'll just call him B. Um, Basically, that person was the best person for him because my friend, who is a shrink, is a counselor, is and he's gone through it. He's been totally screwed up on drugs and alcohol and you name it. And in that scene, he was a musician in the punk scene, the whole kind of that whole scene, right? And so I've been very blessed. My body can't stand any of that crap. I can't really drink. I can't really do any drugs. I mean, I can, try them out. My body says, "Oh, let's try this." So I try it, and I go, "Eh." So I've never really gotten into it, right? Because it's a bad habit. And see, that's part of the problem of human beings is that they're habitual. Now, I can be as habitual as anybody, but my spirit or whatever you want to call it won't let me do it too long. Either, like so when I was, working for the Desperate Boys for about 10 years, and I really only was super hedonist for about 8. Um, I didn't do it 24/7. That's really I only worked for those guys 11 weeks of the year. That's all I needed. People. But if you worked all the time, you'd be a millionaire. I said, screw that shit. I don't need $1 million because I'm living very nice on 400. So when I was working for those guys, pretty much I had as much. I could buy a new car. I bought houses. I bought properties. I bought stock. I did all that kind of stuff, and I did pretty well by it. I bought it low, sold it high, right? And at a certain point where I had accumulated the most crap I had, I basically died. And then when I came back, I said, and I took that 5 months or so. That guy needed me. I worked on 3 of his projects. And I got myself to where I was, yes, I was in a wheelchair, but I was moving forward, meaning I wasn't going to, I still had my legs, I still had my colon, my blood and my homeostasis was doing good, right? And within 3 years, I walked around with clamps on my legs and sticks, but within 4 years, I was just hobbling around like I am now, right? And I had good days and bad days. Sleeping on concrete for the last 5 weeks, but it's a good thing because I am experiencing what the people in the Gaza Strip are, but there's no planes bombing me, But I'd like to see some of you guys out there sleeping on a couple sheets of cardboard on concrete floors. I'd like to see you, right? And really having no, it's a big windy building. It's got some heat, but it's yeah. When it was 8 degrees outside, it was 54 inside. How warm are your houses, right? the man cave. I left there because the first 4 days when that northern ridiculous cold came down, I was it was 8 degrees outside the man cave. It was 28 degrees inside, and that was with the heater. I had an $100 electric bill. Just getting it to 28 degrees. I'd like to see some of you folks living that way, right? I'd like to see you eating off your lawn. When in about 4 or 5 weeks from now, I'll be able to eat burdock and dandelions again, right? Then my body will feel much better, and I'll be able to sleep in the deep green, right? Because the road will get so bad, those chuckleheads, because I left them a message. When people are really losing it is when their voicemail gets totally filled up and you know they don't answer their phone anymore. And so I used to fix our road all the time because I could. But and then the jerk offs who really destroyed it, they got thrown in jail. So and one went, who knows? And so for a good year and a half, almost two, the road was great. I really didn't have to take care of it because those assholes. Now one of them's back, and one of the kids has a boyfriend who is like genetically, like he's like the jerk off. So the road was that's why it's such a mess. And when the rain comes, they will not be able to get in and out. So I don't have to worry. When that comes, things will be growing, and I'll be able to drive in and park my car and stay there for 3 or 4 weeks without worrying about anything. I'll just eat dandelions and grass and not have to worry about this place because I don't have to, right? I put in, pretty and pretty much all the people who run this, who are on the board, they realize, without Al, this place wouldn't be here, right? He's the guy 5 years ago who said, oh, this is going to happen. Oh, it'll never happen. No, blah, blah, nothing will ever change. Blah, 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 blah. And then, shit happened. And then I said, we have to start, instead of us being one little church, we have to kind of go out to our brethren and not just the other Baptists, but, let's I also go to a Catholic church and a Methodist church, and let's work together. And there's this lady over here who's like, oh, I can't work with her, she's so, but no, I got them all to work, and that's why we were able to do this, because we had a supply chain. We had all these churches had other churches they've connected to all around the country. So when this happened here, we had over 300 churches show up here from all around America. I don't keep the books, but we had millions of dollars worth of stuff, not old crap out of people's, bottom of their closet, but brand spanking new stuff that we gave out to everybody, right? And we gave it. We didn't, and that was part of my thing. I just kept giving stuff. No, I don't know if we should give so much. We might need. No, we don't need this. They need it. We don't. So, and that's what I'm here for. It's not to be the administrator, the orchestrator, or the boss, but when someone needs it, no, up it goes, right? And so, like electric heaters and gas heaters and generators, I just grabbed a few guys who had trucks, and we put about 20 grand worth of generators on the back of those trucks and went out into the hinterlands where the power wasn't coming back for a week or two or three, because our utility in its wisdom sent 60% of the trucks and workers down to Florida for the hurricane, and they didn't get back. No one came to fix our electrics. So the Corps of Army Engineers showed up because they couldn't. Their satellite didn't work, but we had Starlink, and we hear you. You guys can we have to call home, and so they hooked up to our satellite, and they based themselves here for a week, and we fixed the roads, and we cleared the main road so other utility companies from other states that these churches that were coming to us called up their brother-in-law, and they came and fixed the main lines, which got the juice out around, but still all the secondaries, not so much. So that's why we took those generators to all those people. And they said, well, do we have to give them back? I said, no, you keep them. And we hooked them up so it went straight into their system, and we put shut off things. When the juice went off, it clicked the generators on, and we didn't, and people donated the generators and the equipment to install it. And now I couldn't do it, but I brought a bunch of young guys who had tools and were relatively handy. I had, 4x4s and side by sides, and we got up there and did that to about 40 houses, right? And we did it not just for one house, but in an area that 4 or 5 houses we kind of connected. So that's how it gets done, right? And so I went away for about a month when there was a nice little window between the catastrophe and after the catastrophe, in September, um, November and October. I mean, October and November, and the first part of December were pretty nice, right? I mean, especially after the hurricane, it was 70 degrees and sunny every freaking day. So after the first 6 weeks, when we got over the big, I basically came back to the deep green and enjoyed that almost 2 months of the beautiful fall, which is a beautiful time to be here. And it was in the 60s and 70s during the day, and in the 40s and 50s at night. You couldn't beat it, right? But then December came, and about December before Christmas, you got friggin', like I said, 8 degrees at night, -8, right? And didn't get above 28 on a sunny. Anyway, so at 2 or 3 days of that, I was getting pretty nippy, and then this big snowstorm was about to show up. So I just threw a bunch of stuff in the car, and that's the car that Jesus lent me. Jesus had been driving it around the Gaza Strip, seeing how that was going, like back in November, and then he showed up and said, "Here, Al, you need the car more than I do." And it was a pretty crappy, you know, really shitty. But I put the last pennies I had, put 4 new tires, big tires, and new brakes and a new front end. About 20, the last nickel I had, and it's been, when Jesus gives you a car and you believe in it, you have faith in it, you put your last nickel into it, and I use it to service other people. I'd like to see some of this go on, right? Now, I've worked, all over and with every kind of element and government and you name it, I've done it, right? There are a lot of great people in all these institutions, right? But they kind of get stuck there, right? And so that's what I was talking to my friend about. He goes, Al, you've been all around, you've done all these different things, right? I said, yeah, but you brought up 2 great kids and they're doing great stuff and you've got great grandchildren. He goes, yeah, but you got those 128 godchildren, and I keep bumping into them because when I was taking care of them, Jay was, part of my life, and he was the plumber. He was the guy who taught everyone how to do plumbing in those 50 abandoned buildings, right? He made sure, and he was the guy who helped me put legal gas into those buildings, right? Because he had a master's plumbing license, I had a master's electrician's license. Me and Michael Curtin, the 2 youngest guys ever in New York City. And when I did it, New York City was so corrupt, the FBI said, "You cheated. Who'd you pay off?" They made me take the test 3 different times, right? And, first time, oh, what was on the test. So second time, they took different parts of different tests. And the New York test wasn't just a written test. You had to you had to they gave you a list of materials. You had to bring the materials. They gave like nomenclature rather than, describing what it was, like okay, 1900 box, or Anyway, so I took the test 3 different times in the space of a month, right? And I was in the local 3, right? And my Grandpa Stoll, he knew the FBI guys better than I did, and that's how I got to know them, because and so they said, "Oh, Grandpa Stoll, we know you're totally honest, and so this guy's your protege, okay, but he got 100. No one gets 100. Like this kid does. So I got 100, 98, 99, right? And I didn't, you know, each thing I had to wire, like a 5 horse motor with a starter and a double gig and 2 push buttons, and all 3-way switches and blah 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 blah, right? How to tune a transformer, 440, 600 volts, all the rest. And so anyway, the guy was like some like electrical engineer slash FBI agent. The last time I took it, he just watched me do it, and he said, "No, no, no, this kid is." So I got like a little FBI badge, for being. Hey, I never whined, I never cried. I just took the test again, again, and again. So Michael Curtin takes it like 6 months later, because I went through all of that, and he was another guy like me. He was another. Um, he was. So we were the 2 young Turks in Local 3, and in we did all the kind of interesting electric stuff, right? And he was a little bit younger than me, and he had worked out in Queens, and Grandpa Stahl knew that guy, and that's where I got to meet Donald Trump's father through Michael Curtin, because we got at we were both apprentices, and then I became a journeyman because no one would teach the course, and I was teaching the course, and Michael comes on later, and I'm already, and they're trying to get more young people in. So again, they can't find any journeymen who are going to do this, and so it needs more than me. So Michael is another guy who kind of comes on as apprentice, working for a house in Queens, and shows up there, and there are more people. So he says, "I can teach this too." This, and that's how I met him. And we weren't competitors. We were like brothers, and we were like almost doppelgangers. We were really, and he was a very, I don't want to say shy, but introverted. And I'm Aquarian, so Aquarians are very interesting because we are introverted extroverts, meaning we're mostly on the inside, looking out, right? But we're very facile being able to talk to people and interact with folks, because we're not emotionally, what's the right word? Invested. That's it, right? And my first wife, that was one of her little complaints. She goes, "You're like a saint. You're like you know, um, a compassionate computer. You're like Mr. Spock. Everything about you I love. You're just the best. You're my best friend. You're just always thinking about me, not you. Blah blah blah. But you treat everyone nice, not just me. I want you to just treat me nice, and you can treat everyone else crappy. Now you can manipulate other people to protect me, but you treat everyone nice." And I said, like, that's part of my strategy. See, I'm a strategist. It's a lot. My mother used to say, "You get a lot more flies with honey than vinegar." And she's right, right? You can get your way. You can navigate through a situation a lot better. I mean, one of the reasons why I'm still alive, for almost 2 years, like 14 months, maybe 16 months, I was at the, worked at the Housing Authority Police Department as a conflict resolution, right, officer. And my partner was like the angel of death. She was the first woman to graduate the U.S. Army's Ranger program, and she was #1 in her class. And she was such a badass that people were scared of her, so they made her a major sergeant. and put her in charge of certain elements of training um, rangers. Anyway, so one of the reasons why we're both alive is that I was nice to everybody, right? Even the OGs, even the gangsters, even the tweakers, you name it, we were nice to them because I told her, much better to be nice to begin with and not go in there, guns drawn, but go in nice. So I'll go in nice, and if I can't work it out, you go in and kill everyone. And if everyone knows that that's how it is going to roll, we'll be very successful. And she would just stay out there in the hallway, right? She got my back, and I would go through the door, and I would have no weapon, and I'd be not screaming. I'd usually be coming in with a really cold 6-pack, in a paper bag. And I'd have nothing, I'd have no radio. I'd have my little dangling ID. And then I was teaching folks how to do that. What is, please wait while, okay, I waited. Anyway, so how long have we been? An hour and 16 minutes. So Fish was the only one to say anything, and she took down half of her stuff. Let's call up Fish and see how she's doing. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. Do, do. Where is this? Here it is. Boop. Boop. There we go. Boop, 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 boop. Give her one more ring.
Hey, this is Angie.
Well, I guess he didn't answer the phone. So bring it on home, I guess. The dynamic is that if everyone could reach into their deeper self and see who they really are and bring out their better self and be their best. What I'm seeing going on with our present social, economic, environmental, how humanity within a culture, right, of this, I don't even know what to call the hidden hand because we are being played, all these wars, all this conflict, everything has been going on in the same motif. More than one is using. Who knows what that. I don't know. I'm only. Who knows? I don't know what you're talking about. Error. And I have my more than one in gestation is using the URL send one stream. Well, I don't see anything else streaming along. Anyway, maybe I'm just gonna go. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this show. I'll come back maybe in a few minutes.